Good afternoon and welcome to another town hall discussion from City Hall here in the city of Bloomington. I'm Yael, Ksander, the communications director for the city, here with Mayor John Hamilton, Director of Public Engagement, Mary Catherine Carmichael, and Deputy Mayor Mick Renneisen. And today we're talking about the second biennial Bloomington Community Survey that will be sent out early next month. This is, Mayor, the second time our community has done this, and tell me what it's all about, who's conducting it, and why we're doing it.
Well, thanks. These are really exciting and interesting things to do in our city. I'm really glad we do them. You know, when in our work in public service, city government, you spend a lot of time listening and trying to get information from people in many, many different ways. And, you know, I go to hundreds of meetings every year, public meetings, and I run into people in the grocery store and I get feedback. And we have many formal ways, of course, through boards and commissions and city council meetings and many formal settings, letters, emails, etc. But we also do, we've been trying to do some new ways to gather information to enhance that. One of which we may talk about later is a little quick online rifle shot survey that we're doing at Polco, which we can talk about. But this city survey is new. And what we're doing, one, it's really important because it's scientific. We have engaged a firm that does a random sample that really tries to reach out to a representative group of our community. It's really hard to do that because public meetings, you don't get a random sample of people, and many other ways that we communicate, we don't get a random sample. And the goal with this survey is, let's get a random sample of our community and ask a lot of questions and see what they think. It helps us understand how people think about the services we give and what's important in the community. And really importantly, this being the second one, it starts to let us see trend lines. So I talk too much, but the two things I'd say. The first is it helps us compare ourselves to peer cities. So right away you can see, well, where do people in Bloomington feel quite differently from people in 20 other cities kind of like us around the country? That's important. And then over time, what's the view in Bloomington changing over time in significant ways? And we don't know that yet, but we hope to start finding that out.
You know, we should probably talk about the genesis of this just a little bit and why we even started to do this back 2 years ago and why we're looking at the second one now. Back when the world was young, Mick was the director of the Parks Department and I was a Parks Commissioner. And so the Parks Department had been using this company to do these surveys every 5 years.
And we should clarify, they're called the National Research Center.
Right,
It's a
NRC,
national firm
right.
of social scientists who do this polling.
That's right. This is what they do for a living. They're very good at it. So the results that they give us, we know, are statistically accurate and viable. And so they are scientific. And so you can count on them. They're not just random. They're very, this is what they do. So anyway.
It is a random survey.
It is a random survey. That's right. So anyway, the Parks Department did these every 5 years. And as a Parks Commissioner, I knew that I really relied on these results to make decisions. We referenced them over and over and over again when trying to decide what would the people want us to spend our resources on. Mick likes to use the example of trails. We did one of these 5-year studies and people said, oh, we want trails. We did the one 5 years later. We want trails. And 5 years later, we want trails.
And
so
that
it's
came
very
as a surprise from what I understand. Mick, maybe you've described it.
It did. My first year as director was 1996. I had come from running most of the sports and revenue producing facilities in the department. So if you would have asked me, I would have predicted they wanted more softball fields or an indoor sports facility or something, because that's where my head was at. Fortunately, I had some good advisors around me that said, why don't we ask the community broadly what they think, and we used a research firm, different one than this one actually, a group called the ETC Institute, as Mary Catherine said, as part of our master planning process, and the survey results were resoundingly, we want trails. Now you have to think in 1996, the only trail in Bloomington was the rail trail, and it was not paved, but it was beloved by the community, and clearly there was a desire to build more trails. So then we initiated the trail building initiation step was the Clear Creek Trail in 2 phases, and then later the Bee Line, and now many more, and everyone continues to tell us, not just in parks, but now in my role as deputy mayor, keep building trails, make the connection pieces together. Had we not done the survey, I think we would have missed the mark as a department. I would have missed the mark in my role as the leader of the department to listen to what our community residents wanted. It wasn't a little bit of an answer, it was a resounding build trails. Everything else paled in comparison, and that's been the case ever since then. So in my new role with Mayor Hamilton 3 years ago, I suggested to the mayor, we should do one of these. Now there's risk in doing these, right? And I applaud you for doing it, not only doing it once, but doing it twice, because you don't always get those answers that are as clear, and they're not always the ones you want to hear, but they are accurately reflective of the community's interests and where they want you to focus your resources and attention. So we did that. We'll learn from the 2019 version. We have a baseline, we'll see where the needle moves.
Well, I'm curious, I mean, obviously you have a rather limited scope when you're talking about what people value within parks. When they're talking about the whole city, what are the kinds of questions that someone who receives this survey can expect to be answering?
So it's very wide ranging, and I think it's interesting because we ask specific things like, how would you rate the fire service in this community? And so we'll get an answer for that. In that case, and in that specific example, it was in the high 90s, like very, very, very high approval. Everybody's very pleased with their fire service. Or it might be something, there'll also be questions though that are more opinion, attitude, like, what do you think of, do you love living, or what do you like about living in Bloomington, or do you like living in Bloomington? Do you think you're going to be here 5 years from now? Would you recommend this as a place to others to come and live? And so we look at those questions, and they're very different. They're less concrete, they're more opinion-based, but they're still really important because it tells us how people who live here feel about their experience.
And let me understand too, even though this is a national firm that formulates and administers and conducts the survey, we have input in the questions so that they're tailored to Bloomington, is that correct?
Absolutely. A lot of the questions are standard, we call them standard benchmark questions, but then we have a choice of what those questions are going to be. So, for example, we're really interested in housing. We knew that was an issue, and so we have several questions about housing, affordable housing, how people view that and what they'd like to see us do about that. In a community that's not facing that issue, they may choose to have fewer of those questions. So in that way, yes, it's customized for our community.
One of the great things about this research firm is it has a database of hundreds of communities around the country, so you can selectively look at how do we benchmark against everyone, or we can look at specific cities that look like us. How do we compare to Boulder or Madison or other places? So that's the real benefit of using a research firm like this, and the wealth of data they have as a benchmark.
We should emphasize too that once this data is generated, we post it. So you can look right now at the website of the City of Bloomington, at Community Survey, or you can look straight onto our Be Clear portal and see all of these results.
Right.
And this information, I mean, we should talk about how we use it and what we want to do with it. But it's also available to anyone. This is public data. And
it is, and it's useful, I think. I mean, you know, internally, we all know every department head gets this data. They use this data when they're developing the budget. It's part of the presentation to City Council as the Parks Department or the Public Works Department or the Water Utility presents their budgets and thinks about that. This helps get them data. Now, of course, they get data. We get information from lots of places, but this is important. I've also presented it to you know, the realtors of Bloomington and other groups that look at this, and they can be interesting. And as you said, they can pull that data down, tease it, analyze it. For those who are into polling and surveys, you can also do all the crosstabs, if you call, as they are called, which means you can say, well, I want to know what the people in the northwest quadrant who are female said about this issue, or I want to know. You can get the cut data into different slices to do that, which is helpful. But you know, groups that market the city or groups that are trying to understand the city can pull out what they want to look at. And I do hope From my perspective, this is something we need to keep doing every 2 years and really build up a set of data, because by the time we get to year 6 and 8, you really start to get a rich database of, well, which direction are we moving? You know, we've seen some outliers of positives and some concerns, and we want to see what direction we go with those.
And I assume also it will help make decisions about where we direct resources, for example.
Absolutely.
So for example, when you learned that people didn't so much want ball fields, they wanted trails, I guess there was an idea of reallocating funds within parks to do so. Is that?
That's absolutely
Yeah.
correct. That's what led to investments in those resources. Of course, there were 20 other things that the community wanted, but the resources were redirected in a way that reflected the most important thing, and that was the trail building initiative. So for the city, we have that same data. Where are the points where there's an emphasis on things that we could get better at? And if you wanted to point one of those out, I think we have a slide that shows some information about some of that. And we're going to talk about a couple of other, the many various ways this data has produced itself. So would you like to point out one of those?
I was going to pull up, let's pull up figure 17 maybe, that one might be helpful. I referenced this a little bit a minute ago when talking about giving people an opportunity to rate the characteristics as they relate to the city of Bloomington as a whole. So how do they like their fire services? So between excellent and good, 94% of the people in Bloomington think our fire services are either excellent or good. The farmer's market, 90% excellent or good. Ambulance or emergency medical service, 89%. Trails, 86%. And again, these are all excellent or good. Parks, 83%. The Lotus Festival, a 4th Street Arts Fair, 82%. Garbage collection, 78%. Police services, 78%. Fire prevention and education, 76%. So most people, the vast majority, think we're doing a really good job in those areas. So we were, of course, happy to see that, but we're going to be really interested to see when the results of this one come out in April. What does that look like now? Are we doing as well, or do we need to maybe work harder in some area? Does the public perceive that we've lost ground, or have we in fact even improved from these numbers? So that's the great thing about having these 2 data points now to be able to compare apples to apples.
Because the questions will remain this constant from 2017 to 2019.
Yeah, and you know, I should make the point, we had an opportunity to change the questions, but I have to tip my hat to Mick and the other folks who worked on the questions for the original survey. They were so good that when we revisited them prior to this year, we looked at them and we were like, these are really good, and this is still information that we need to have and want to have to base decisions on. So yes, let's continue. And so because of that, we will have apples to apples and oranges to oranges across the board, and I think that's going to be fascinating information to be able to see and compare.
I should remind our listeners and our viewers that we're live from City Hall today on Facebook and discussing the imminent Bloomington Community Survey to be mailed to households around the community in the first week of February.
They should
correct?
start arriving, the first week of February. People can look for them.
But only 3,000 people get it,
Right,
so most people
3,000.
won't get the survey.
That's right.
But there is an alternative too, if you don't get the random survey. Right?
That's correct. You can go online, and it was really interesting. The last time we did this, as the mayor said, we mailed out to 3,000 households, which is what NRC determined was the appropriate number of households, sample correct, to send out to. We had about 600 solid responses, and that's perfect. That's great. But we made the opportunity. We gave the opportunity to everybody, anybody who wants to respond to these questions. And so you can go online and do that, and 1,500 roughly households decided, yeah, I want to answer those questions too. So those were figured differently.
Right, because that's the non-scientific,
That's correct,
Okay.
right.
It's like a TV poll or something,
Yeah, it's really interesting, but the interesting part of that is the answers really weren't all that different.
Oh, pretty consistent.
Yeah, pretty consistent. So,
interesting.
but we continue to keep those answers separate, just because, again, one is scientific and one is considered unscientific.
Yeah, well, we should
Although-
talk.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, some of this stuff sticks in my head from reading, because one of the important things is where do we stand out quite differently from the peer communities that we talked about. I remember we came in actually number one virtually in the whole country among 300 cities when asked how many of us said yes to the question, did you volunteer on a campaign or a cause in the last year? So Bloomington really is at the top of the charts for involvement of people in particularly campaigns and causes. And then there were some other things where we stood out, if you will. One was really the appreciation for the arts and culture. We scored so high in the random survey of people who said that is so important to me in Bloomington, that we have this arts and culture vibrancy. I really value that in the community. So that, look, as a city, that reminds us we really need to pay attention to it. It's not news to us, but that's affirming to us. And it's some of the reasons, for example, we've been pushing to get some more festivals, which we've gotten, and that we've been doubling the arts investment in arts grants because our community is saying we really value that.
This is part of what makes Bloomington Bloomington.
Exactly.
And since we're talking about public engagement today, I do want to encourage our audience to chime in. And if you put your questions there on the Facebook page, they'll be relayed to us and we'll try to address them for you.
So I wanted to make a point. If you would pull up figure 13. We've been talking about comparing ourselves to other communities, but interestingly, we don't just compare ourselves to, let's see, do I have the right one? No, okay, sorry, that's the wrong one, I apologize. No glasses makes this hard. I wanted to do the government, this one, yeah, 15.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 15.
15, that's what we're looking for. So we compare ourselves, yes, to other communities, but also, again, because of the rich data that this company has, they're able to say, okay, how does the city of Bloomington compare to the federal government, resident satisfaction with the federal government and the state government? And we came out pretty well on this. People felt that we were either excellent or good. 80% of respondents felt that city of Bloomington government was excellent or good. Federal government came in at 28%. I don't think they do that well today. And then the Indiana state government came in at 25%. So won't that be interesting to see how that needle moves when we get these results and announce them this spring?
Wow, and these are the results of the scientific poll. That's
Right.
that's nice
Well,
to see.
it reminds you it's important. Local government is closer to people, and we need to keep listening. I would probably score state and federal pretty low myself on that. I didn't actually get this survey; it wasn't mailed to me. But the local government of Bloomington, through its long history, is closer to people, and we do need to be more responsive. And I think we are. But it's really interesting. I do encourage you, if you haven't looked at this, it's fun to just dig through it online, and you'll find something that you may like and find interesting. And we definitely find it a way, among many, but a new way to get information from people about what they think about the city and governmental services.
Yeah, Yael does a great job as communications director. She's constantly pushing information out to people to help educate and inform people about what's going on as city government. And so the other part of that is pulling information in.
And that's where you come in.
That's where I come in. So that's why I'm so excited to have this tool to bring information in to inform our decision making going forward. And as you made the point, not just our decision making, but anybody who wants to access this information. So other elected officials, not-for-profits, businesses, as you said, this is great information that anybody can access with a couple of taps to a keyboard.
Wow, yeah, if I'm a business, if I'm an arts business, if I'm a media marketing business, or if I'm anything like that, and I see the nature of this community, that they value arts so highly, for example, that's going to be a massive incentive for me to locate my business here. I'm going to know that I'm going to have tons of great personnel here to staff my business. There's going to be a lot of interest. Also for our social service organizations, they can use this information about delivery of services.
Now, of course, it wasn't all sweetness and light.
Oh gosh, you had to go there.
There's some things people told us they don't love about Bloomington too, right? Mick, are these your, no, you want to talk about?
Well, I just wanted, I'll be happy to.
Let's do figure 10,
Figure 10,
please,
yeah.
thanks.
And I think it's a fair question to say, how do you use the data that you get from this? What does it really mean in terms of the decisions we make, the administration makes, the department heads make? And one of the pain points is traffic, mobility, and parking, all right? That's the number one most responded to at 22%. What do you like least about the city of Bloomington? So what have we done about that since, remember, this was 2017. We were all dealing with I-69 in 2017, and we were still dealing with it and are still dealing with it in 2019, but it's almost complete, let's say, substantially complete is the state's term. Well, we had a lot of that pain this summer in 18. And so realizing it was a pain point even before it was worse, it got worse before it got better.
Right.
We deployed some of our resources in a way to try to minimize the disruption that was going on with multiple projects, I-69 being the biggest one, but it had a ripple effect on city and county projects that, because of the funding source, had to be done in the year that they were done. Of course, when we planned these projects 4 years ago, everyone thought I-69 would be done. So we repurposed some of our limited police resources to the worst intersections by using a drone. Our innovation director was instrumental in helping us get a drone and then using it in an effective way to deploy resources in real time to make that traffic disruption minimized. We didn't cure it, we didn't solve it, it was bad, but it was better had we not paid attention to this, the survey results, and then using our resources in the most efficient way possible. This would have been a worse response, and we still may see that. We still may see people.
I wouldn't be surprised if 19's a little worse than 17 on this, because
Because of
18
the pain
was
we
tough.
went through, yeah.
It was tough.
People will remember that.
Now, the other thing, traffic, mobility, and parking, it also affirms the importance of trying to do all we can to reduce the need for traffic, and the investment in trails and mobility and the bike share program that we have and other techniques of getting around that don't worsen traffic. The transit system, which rated very, very highly, by the way, in this survey too, the public transit, but those negatives also reminded, well, not only how do we deal with the hard stuff, but how do we try to diminish it? So our investment in trails and the mobility options, it encourages that. Number 2 on there was affordable housing built environment.
So what are the numbers there on that?
That's 18%. So the second
Second
highest concern was affordable housing.
And actually significant right below that was homelessness. So if you put that together, the community cares a lot about affordable housing and homeless. And we actually, I think, had another question. I don't think we have a graphic that said a very high number of the city respondents said, please do something about homelessness. They want us to act on this. So that reminds me every day. It reminds us every day the importance of working on those affordable housing, the hundreds of units that we've helped create, and the homelessness response that we've done with Safe Civil Just efforts. So, those pain points are important to hear too.
Yeah. Well, back to sweetness and light, if I may, for a moment. We had a nice comment from Tammy, who's watching, thanks, who, when we were discussing the value that our citizens put on the arts here in Bloomington, she said, agreed, we moved here from Dallas by choice because of the arts, community, music, and culture. We're loving it. And I'm wondering if Tammy, in fact, thanks Tammy, wondering if you looked at our 2017 survey to make that decision.
Well, welcome to Bloomington.
Yeah, and that's a good affirmation. And sometimes what the survey does is affirm what you think you know, and strengthens you and resolves to keep plugging away at it. Sometimes, like at parks, it surprises you with things you don't know, and both of those are good and important.
Valuable, yeah.
Yeah, I think it bears repeating that not everyone is going to get one of these in the mail.
Most of us won't.
Most of us won't.
Right.
It's a randomized sample. So this National Research Center has its way of sending this out in a way that cuts across across the spectrum of the community. So,
Right, so the way they structure it, so let's say, for example, and I'm making this up completely, so don't hold me to this, but let's say 30% of our housing units are rentals. So that's the percentage of people, 30% of people that get the survey will be in rental units. So that way it reflects accurately our overall population.
So it's really important if you get one
Please complete it.
Take
Yeah.
the time, and 1 out of 5 people typically do it. That's a pretty good return rate. That doesn't sound good if you're a member of the public, but that, in reality, to take 15 to 20 minutes to fill the survey out, which it probably will take you that long to do it. There's about 30 questions. Please do that,
Yeah.
because you are the scientific version of this, and then we fully expect another 1,500 people will take the non-random survey, and that's
Yeah.
great. We value that input equally, and we'll love to see the results from both. But if you get one in the mail, you're special. We need you to take it and spend 15 or 20 minutes of your time giving us your feedback. It's really important.
By the way, one question I got about this too was students. Do students get this? Absolutely. A lot of our residents are students, and they do get this survey. As you said, it's kind of normalized to reflect the actual populations. If for example, if women return the survey more than men, it's normalized to fit the right population. And we can look at it with and without students too, to see identification. But again, it's not big differences in that. But please do answer it if you get the survey. We appreciate it. And if you don't get the survey, jump online and do the survey yourself. When will the online be available? You know, that's usually a little
Yeah, a little bit later. We want
So-
people to do the
Yes.
mailed one.
So that won't happen till.
But that'll all be announced. We'll be sending out press releases, and we'll be talking about it in social media. You'll be sick of hearing it before it's over. But yeah, we'll have lots of opportunities and keep sharing that information. But you know, if you do receive a survey, please fill it out right away. When you get it, don't set it on the dining room table and forget about it. Just go ahead and take the time to complete it. We will be sending out reminders if you don't remember to do it right away, but we would ask that you please do that, because that just makes the whole process go more smoothly.
Yeah, and I'd like to remind folks who may have just happened upon us that we're talking about the upcoming 2019 Bloomington Community Survey that will be mailed out to a selection of households, in a randomized selection of households in a couple of weeks. And we're here with Mayor Hamilton and Mary Catherine Carmichael and Deputy Mayor Mick Renneisen. And we're welcoming your questions about the Bloomington Community Survey. Mayor, I just want to take a second to contextualize this effort within the larger push to get public data out there that we've seen in the last 3 years.
Well, right. This is part of, from day one, we've been committed, I've been committed in our administration to transparency and to try to share so much data. The city has a lot of data, and we've put more than 150 data sets out there. Be clear, please feel free to jump in and look at that, whether it's from public safety to streets and sanitation to parks and others, financial information, all. You'll surely find something you're interested in out of those 150, and this survey too. You know, this is a bunch of raw data and a bunch of interpreted data both, and we're very committed. The public owns the government. The public owns the information that's in the government, and the more people know about government, the better both of us are, government and the people. And so we've worked really hard to keep pushing information out and then receiving information.
Laura, if you could pull up figure 29, I just want to kind of reinforce and dovetail with what you're saying. One of the things that we looked at and asked about was, how, as a resident of Bloomington, do you like to receive information? What works for you? And so, as you can see, local media outlets were 90% of the folks who responded found that was an important source for them. So as we look at how to communicate with people, we reference this and say, okay, you know, as we budget dollars or budget time, budget energy, this is how we're going to, the way we're going to use outlets, various media outlets to get information out to you. So again, this is what I'm really interested in, seeing if this has changed in 2019, how our habits as residents have changed. Are we now relying more on social media outlets as opposed to the traditional media? I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and we will adjust accordingly the way we send out our messages to meet people where they are.
I find this very interesting in that this would have been my surprise from the last survey, like my park surprise from 25 years ago, that our website was number 2 after the local media outlets. I think that's phenomenal. It means how important it is for us to do a good job of updating our content on our website. We obviously have a lot of people looking at it.
Which
need
we
to
didn't
make
work
sure-
at.
Right, exactly.
Which
Yeah.
we do the whole website.
That's
We
right.
redid our
We
website.
unveiled the new website about a year ago, is that correct?
Yeah, and we really pushed that out the door based on this, like, we have got to get our new website up.
People need it, they're
Yeah,
using it.
people
right?
really
Yeah,
need
that's
that.
And
good.
you know, we have won a number of awards at the national and state level because of that updated website, so.
So we'll see what happens with those data. I mean, they're pretty close, and so we always have to be careful whether there's statistically significant differences among these,
Yeah.
but that was kind of interesting how
Yeah.
high that was.
And then third and fourth, and I always find third interesting, word of mouth, which means you learn something and you talk to your neighbors or your friends, and then they share it with 20 people, and that just, magnifies so the word of mouth is number 3 at 85%, and then social media. So that one, I would guess, has moved up considerably from my parks days. I remember it not being near this high, but then again, you have to
Yeah.
think about how
Our habits have changed and evolved.
yeah, to the point where social media is everywhere. And so now it's the 4th highest at 75%. So I think we'll all be interested to see if that moves up yet higher, or does it sort of normalize and level off.
Yeah, so for data nerds, this is gonna be like Christmas when these results come in,
Sure.
because it's just gonna be so interesting.
It's a great
Data
antidote.
nerds, right?
That's true, but I mean, it's a great antidote to the Bloomington boosterism that we all sometimes suffer from. You know, those of us who've lived here for a while really love this place and could possibly be a little biased in
Sure.
favor of it, right?
Right.
And so this really undercuts that anecdotal or that sort of sentimental or subjective element by giving us a random sample of opinions from the community, not anecdotal.
And like Joan said, we do, oftentimes we hear from the same group of people, which is great. We
Yeah.
value their input so much. But this just is
Branches.
a broader base and reaches out to some folks who may not choose to communicate with us in any other way. So again, this is just so valuable. If you get one of these surveys, again, please participate.
Yeah, that may be a point to emphasize here, that we want information from everybody in this community. And a lot of people don't have time to get to a public meeting, or they just have other priorities, and that's perfectly fine. You can live in our community and not have your top priority. I want to tell government what to do. You get to do that when you vote for people anyway. But that's one reason it's mailed out to reach everybody. We work really hard. Of course, it's not perfect, but so people can respond by mail or online, whatever's easiest for them when they get the survey. And again, it's one of many ways to get input, but it's a new one. It's an important one, and so please look for it and be involved with it.
Okay, so if you're more inclined to do it online, if you get it in the mail, you can
I think that's right.
you submit it online?
Yes.
Rather than,
So you have a choice.
okay, if you are one of the households that's selected.
There will be a special identifier,
Okay.
so that.
And then there's something else about, it's just one respondent per household, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, and
Okay.
they give you a formula on who to choose. It's a person over
Don't
80.
give it away. They have like a random formula, right? Isn't it like
Oh, it's a
Well,
person over
it
80
goes
who had the
to-
most recent birthday.
most recent birthday? So if you have a birthday on February 4th, you got to watch out if you're going to be the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're two parents and
Although we
two
won't be
kids,
checking up on that, so.
and you've already had, right, so the person who's had the most recent birthday in that household, if everyone's over 18.
I think that, yeah.
Okay, so the idea is.
It's
we
to
don't
avoid
want-
fights at home.
Yeah,
That's sort of the way they decide to
Right.
get it.
No, I want to fill it out. No, I want
All right, and so people can expect this to be coming into their homes.
First week of February, roughly, yeah.
Right, and
Depending on
again,
US mail, which sometimes is a little
Right.
unpredictable.
Government shutdowns and that kind of
Yeah. Oh.
Well,
we're hoping this won't be affected by the government shutdown, although many other things are. And again, this is Facebook live town hall discussion about the Bloomington Community Survey. We're going to be wrapping up soon, so we encourage you to engage publicly. Give us your input about what you think the value of a survey is, what your concerns are about Bloomington, and any other technical questions you might have about how this is working.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting us know what you think about things with the survey. Of course, all the other ways you can get in touch with us. we appreciate it, and I appreciate the good hard work too of Mary Catherine, you on this round, and making this survey happen again. And it's one more step in the transparency and the engagement that we do, that our community loves. We know we're number one in one measure, at least in engagement, and so this is a part of that, and we thank you all for your participation in it.
We keep talking about ways to contact us. Let me give just a couple of those before we wrap up. So we have bloomington.in.gov, that's our website, but to contact us, super easy, bloomington.in.gov/contact. Makes sense, right? And then, of course, our main phone line is 812-349-3700. Just ask where you'd like to be directed, and we'll get you to the right place, the right person for any questions or comments you might have. Those are probably the most common ways that people reach out to us. Here at the mayor's office, 812-349-3406. We're happy to hear from you. We even have a whole...
Well, I was just going to say we're extremely active on social media.
Absolutely.
So we're putting out information at least 3 times a day on both Facebook and Twitter. So any updates, whether it's a sanitary sewer overflow or whether it's something,
New parade coming.
a new parade, yeah, let's go to the sweetness and light again. That's always your go-to for the latest information.
That's right. And if I could just have one moment to
course,
plug
please.
Our Polko polls. These are polls that come out every 2 weeks. They stay up, they're online polls. Anybody who is a resident of Bloomington can answer them. You do a little sign up and then you're good to go, and you'll be sent notifications every time we put up a new poll. The city-wide biannual survey that we're talking about today, that's kind of a 30,000 foot view. The Polko is a little more urgent. So for example, we've all been interested in and talking about scooters. So that was the first Polko poll that we did at the end of 2018, was talking about scooters. That one is still up. As I said, we do leave them up for 2 months. And those results are also available to anybody who'd like to see them. So it's really interesting.
Great
and
reminder.
Yeah. So polko.us/Bloomington. Get on there and let us know. There's just, again, this is another way that we're pulling information in as well as you pushing information out. So it's got to be that give and take.
I think those Polko, you can kind of see the results as they're going too, right?
Absolutely.
If you answer, so it's just kind of fun.
Yeah, it is fun, and they don't take long.
questions.
They're really short polls. They're about usually about 5 questions. So it doesn't take
Good
much
point.
time, but it's a fun thing to participate in.
Yeah, the big takeaway is that government belongs to all of us. And that, as you said, Mayor Hamilton, your aim was to throw open the doors. So that's sort of what we're doing here. When you participate in the city survey, when you respond to a public engagement poll on Polko, when you maybe go the next step and sign on to a board or a commission, you're participating in your government. So it gives you a sense of investment, even if it's simply taking the 20 minutes to respond to the survey.
Yeah.
Maybe, how long will it take? 20 minutes?
15, 20.
For sure,
For
yeah.
the city, I would budget 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would budget 20 minutes if you want to be thoughtful. And there are some opportunities to kind of fill in the blank a little bit. Most of them are more multiple choice type of opportunities, but yeah. So I would do that. But a Polko poll is probably 5 minutes. So there you go. I think it's a great way to interact with your local government and
to have your voice heard,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
and taken into consideration with regard to decision making.
Thanks,
Well, thank you. Well, thanks to our audience today, and remember that this conversation will be posted at our Facebook page online, the Office of the Mayor, City of Bloomington. So you can review it or refer your friends to it at any time. Look at it again if you'd like to, if you're a real data nerd or survey nerd. And tune in again next time for another Facebook Live Town Hall from City Hall. I'm Yael, Ksander, and I've been speaking today about the Bloomington Community Survey with Deputy Mayor Mick Renneisen, Director of Public Engagement Mary Catherine Carmichael, and Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton. Thanks so much. And
Everyone,
have
thank
a
our
good day.
producer,
Oh,
And thank our
Laura Collins,
producer.
who was always the amazing
Absolutely.
Facebook
We
producer.
wouldn't be
So
here
sorry.
without you, Laura. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Laura.
Have a good day.